This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted.
And thank you all. We are so grateful for all of you joining us today. My name is Ken, and I am a grateful recovering codependent.
And my name is Mary, and I am also a grateful recovering codependent. Thank you, Carol. We want to welcome all of you to this global conversation. We are happy to be here and so grateful to all the CODA members who are helping with this event. Carol, you and the World Events Committee, all the interpreters, and all the behind the scenes CODA members. This wouldn't be possible without everybody working together, and thank you.
Thank you.
You are giving a loving service to us, and we are so grateful. So let's begin. Ken is going to start us off with a reading from chapter 2 from the CODA Blue Book.
And as I read, the interpreters are going to be reading at the same time. For many of us, fear is our guardian. It helps to protect us from harm. As codependents, we habitually use fear to protect ourselves from any opportunity of being shamed by others. Our fear may be cloaked in anger or resentment, pain or loneliness. Oftentimes our passivity or silence, manipulation, isolation, rage, violence, denial, and even deceit are our expressions of fear. Our feelings, other feelings that show up as fear may be concern, anxiety, nervousness, and feelings of being uptight or scared. In my recovery, I've come to learn that there are really only two consciousnesses. And I believe that those are both love and fear. And interestingly enough, fear isn't even real. Fear is a story that I create in my head about how bad something may be. It is a story that I tell myself about the future. It's never about the here and now. So I scare myself about what may happen in the future, whether that might be about something happening tomorrow or the day after or next week. But it isn't actually happening. But I still feel the fear, which leaves me in the here and now feeling pretty terrible. And I've come to learn that you don't scare me. I may scare myself about you. In my codependence, I would blame others for scaring me. But the fact was, I was scaring myself in response to you. It came from being hurt and shamed and terrified at various times as a child. That fear became normal, and I would use it to try to protect myself from bad things happening again. Only I really couldn't tell anyone I was afraid. So I covered my fear up with avoidance and with anger and with rage in an attempt to not be hurt or abandoned or shamed one more time. It was all about protection, always on guard, always hyper vigilant, always trying to stay one step ahead of you. So fear became my salvation, and I would use it in place of faith. So rather than trusting in a loving higher power, I would trust in fear and the stories I made up in my head about what you might say or do. But if you asked me how I was doing or feeling, I would say, fine, because telling you I was afraid was way too vulnerable. And so with that, I'm going to pass on to Mary.
So this next part will be read simultaneously with our interpreters. From Chapter 5, Commonly Asked Questions from the CODA Blue Book, Fear of shame is our fear of being shamed again by our boss, mate, family members, friends, or parents. It has much greater control of our lives than shame itself. We may be afraid to hear about our mistakes or shortcomings, and in turn become defensive or critical, possibly avoiding or lying about a situation. We become terrified of being discounted or abandoned. We control others out of fear of their disappointment or anger with us. The shame we fear most is the same shame we experienced in our childhood. I know for myself, the fear of shame would take me into a regressed childhood state. Even as an adult, I would live my life from that child or that teen. I would become controlling in my caretaking by either trying to fix your feelings or by fixing your feelings by doing for you. In that fear of shame, I would become a chameleon and I would try to be what you wanted me to be. As Ken was saying, when we are shamed or hurt or abused or frightened, when that happens over and over again, 365 days, over 18, 19 years of my life, I developed the habit of trying to control the fear of shame. All of our CoDA patterns and characteristics come from fear, come from trying to survive life, not because we were bad people, but because we were afraid. So much of my life, I medicated my fear through my codependent patterns, through drugs and alcohol, through eating disorders, through lots of addictions and compulsions, all trying to medicate the fear of my codependence. For me, that was a painful way to live, but it kept me alive. And today, my codependence recovery gives me life. So I'm going to turn this back over to Ken.
I'm still Ken, and I'm still a grateful recovering codependent. I'm going to read once again from Chapter 2, Our Spiritual Dilemma, in the CoDA Blue Book, and the interpreters will read at the same time. Our answers to the following questions can help us determine how we've looked to other people or addictions for our emotional well-being. Do I control others to relieve my fears? Do I let others control me for fear of their abuse or neglect? Do I adapt or change my behavior for others? Do I validate my value and worth as a person through them? Do I avoid others in order to feel safe? In reading through these questions, really gave me time to consider my own codependence recovery and my progress in the healing of fear and fearing in this world. I came to CoDA as a recovering addict and alcoholic and rager. And I recognized early on that fear is the core of all codependence. And even Bill W., the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, 80-some years ago, knew this. He understood that fear was the core emotion behind all alcoholism, and that our spiritual dilemma was the struggle between faith and fear. So I consider the questions that I've just read. Do I control others to relieve my fears? I certainly have much of my life, and as well controlled myself through scaring myself. I've come to believe that fear and powerlessness are the same thing. Fear leaves me powerless, and control gives me the illusion of being powerful. If I can control, manage, manipulate, and whatever others, maybe I won't be hurt or shamed, discounted, abandoned, judged one more time. And though I have been addicted to other substances and behaviors, fear was the most difficult and most powerful one of all for me to develop a recovery program for. And obviously that program is CoDA. Each of these questions are about fear. One that stands out strongly for me is number 4. Do I validate my value and worth as a person through others? If I give that power over to you, I'm giving you the power to validate my value, my worth, my well-being, my happiness, which means I give you the power of God. As a recovering addict and alcoholic, I gave the power of my well-being over to drinks and drugs. As a codependent, I gave my power over to fear and shame and transferred it to you. In my recovery today, I give my power and well-being and happiness over to God and not to Mary. It was a difficult situation to learn that Mary is not my happiness, and she is not the source of my fear. My happiness is how I choose to respond to Mary. Back in the day, if Mary was upset, my fear would kick in. It meant God was not happy with me. So I had to control, manage, and manipulate to make her okay. Because if she were okay, then I'm okay, which was a terrible burden that I placed on Mary. I would avoid or control because if I avoided you, you couldn't hurt me. And I would go to great lengths to avoid the hurt, let alone let you see it. I had to be powerful and control the circumstances. And if I couldn't, then I'd run. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mary.
From the CoDA Blue Book, codependence is a disease that deteriorates our souls. We now know that the journey from fear to love is a spiritual path. What is love? Here are some dictionary definitions. 1, a profoundly tender, passionate affection. 2, a feeling of warm personal attachment or deep affection. 3, the act of being loving is feeling or showing love or great care. 4 is warmly affectionate. I love the statement from the CoDA Blue Book that codependence is a disease that deteriorates our souls. Ken was talking about how he would make me his higher power out of fear. I would also do the same with him. Codependence has been referred to as a conflict in gods, meaning I will make Ken my God, I will make fear my God, I will make shame my God, I will make everybody and everything my God out of that fear of shame. When that happens, my soul does deteriorate. I move into profound self-abandonment and I lose myself over and over again. In CoDA, I have learned to find myself. I have learned to love myself. I have learned to have a profoundly tender, passionate affection for myself. And with Ken, I have been able to have a profoundly tender, passionate affection for him. My codependence kept me from being able to truly love. Fear was my God, and in that fear, it blocked all love. from coming and flowing through me. I can remember way, way back before any recovery, looking at a book called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. Before recovery, the idea of that terrified me. As much as I wanted it, I didn't believe it was possible. The love that I have found for myself, for Ken, for my higher power, and for you has come from my codependence recovery. Today, with a grateful heart, I can truly love. Life has changed dramatically since my codependence recovery began, and I am not the same person. My soul no longer deteriorates. Instead, it evolves and flourishes with love. Now I'll turn it over to Ken. Thank you.
I'm going to read simultaneously once again with the interpreters from Chapter 2, Our Spiritual Dilemma, from the CoDA Blue Book. In CoDA, we learn that our self-worth and well-being come from our higher power. We learn to love ourselves as a loving higher power loves us. Then we can begin to love others. I had heard throughout most of my life that I really can't love others until I learn how to love myself. Until CoDA recovery, I did not know what that really meant. Early on in our CoDA recovery, before Codependence Anonymous existed, and early on coming to work in this field, Mary and I had done about 2.5 years of very in-depth therapy. Mary's therapy, my therapy, and our therapy every week. And one of the most difficult things that our therapist got me to do was to take my eyes, my focus, and my attention off of Mary. She practically yelled at me one day, "She is none of your business." And Mary lit up. But it left me very quickly with the awareness that it's only me. It's only me and God. And that I didn't have very good feelings about me, and I really didn't trust God. And I was left with, let me rephrase this. Without my attention on others, I was left with my attention on me and the growing awareness of how much I disliked me, I shamed me, and I scared me a lot. I had done some inner child work as part of my own therapy about 40 years ago, before inner child work was a new and popular form of healing and growth and change. So I knew this child part of who I was, but I didn't know how to love him. Early on in this industry, it was popular to put people into visualization of their inner children. But it also left those people with immediately experiencing and going back to their traumas that the child carries. So we had to learn that before experiencing the child's trauma that we may each carry, I had to develop a strong, loving self-parent to be there for that child. Because for that child, this loving parent is all I have. And developing a loving relationship with myself has come through the relationship between my child and me, the loving parent. And to begin to love and adore who I am as a beautiful creation of God, just like we all are. So I had to learn how to stop the internal critical parent who was shaming and judging me. Those voices that say things like, "You screwed it up again. What is wrong with you? Are you ever going to get it right? You don't matter." Those voices that said, "Don't be yourself, don't be authentic." So through step work I really focused on growing this self-parent and to practice talking with myself with love and affection and boundaries and tough love, but loving discipline, not judgment, criticism, and shame. I was given an assignment early on. It's called mirror work. And I had to stand in front of the mirror every day and to talk through my heart and eyes into the eyes and heart of the man I saw in the mirror with love and care and compassion. It took me about 30 days. I wouldn't stop long enough to make that connection from my heart through my eyes to the eyes and heart of the man, because a part of me knew the pain that would bring. So I'd walk through the bathroom very fast, glance in the mirror and go, sure love you, and then run until one day I made the connection and the tears started to come. And almost 40 years of tears came. And I got to hold that little boy and love him like no one else had. So today in my recovery, it is my parent who is responsible for my self-love and self-care and self-esteem and self-respect and self-integrity. The key word always being self. As a codependent, I always look to you and to others and job and work, etc., for all of those things, because I'm all I have. You can't give it to me. Self-esteem has to come from self. So today I continue to practice a loving relationship with myself and with God, which just allows me to love and adore Mary, which I never thought possible, let alone being together for about 39 years because of codependence recovery. And with that, I'm going to pass.
So I will read this along with our interpreters. What does loving ourselves look like? 1, a conscious relationship with a loving higher power. 2, developing a loving self-parent. 3, loving self-talk. 4, healthy boundaries that are respectful of ourselves and others. 5, loving, empowered, compassionate communication. 6, attending CoDA meetings. 7, working our 12 steps, service work. 8, being aware of our feelings and learning the tools of how to communicate them. This is a short list of how to love ourselves, but it is a place to begin. We can be creative in all the ways that we learn to love ourselves. My sense is love is never ending and shows up in thousands of ways. One of my favorite ones on this list is a conscious relationship with a loving higher power. Conscious being the key word. I, for a long time, had an intellectual relationship with my higher power. I intellectually surrendered my life to my higher power, but my heart never surrendered. I had to be conscious in my body, in my mind, in my spirit, and know that for me, I experience my higher power as a loving oneness that I am conscious of the majority of time because of my codependence recovery. It's no longer just an intellectual relationship or an intellectual concept of a higher power. It's a mind, body, spirit consciousness of a higher power. Working the steps for me is one of the ways that I put that love into action for myself. I've been doing this a long time, but currently I'm going through my steps again, and I'm even learning that much more about myself. I don't think we do the steps just one time. I've done the steps many, many, many times. As we say in recovery, I am always a work in progress, so there is always room for growth. When I first started my codependence recovery, I wanted to get a handle on it, control it, make it go away in about a week or two. It was quite surprising to recognize that it had to do with my humanness and how I was relational through fear, which is why I'm still doing my steps. We're going to be talking about feelings and communication in the next section, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that. And I think this would probably be a good time to open it up for the questions and answers. I think we went over a bit.
Thank you. I think we're doing okay. I love the feedback. I love the feedback that was coming, that the pauses were giving people time to think, time to write, and to process. And thank you all for your patience. So I would suggest, okay, I'm just going to take a moment to find the questions okay, so what we're doing now is the question and answer period. So let's take a moment, and it's a round robin, first come, first serve. So the translators are going to take your question, and I'm going to watch for their translation in the, they can send to me in the WhatsApp, and I will speak it out there. And so if you wouldn't mind sending your question to your interpreter. If you are English, send it to Lorraine. And Lorraine is going to send it, like everyone else, to write it in. Well, Lorraine is going to speak it out on the round robin, and others are going to send it into the WhatsApp chat, so that, because you're all in your channels, and I will read out the questions. And with regards to subtitles, the transcription is an automatic feature with Zoom, and it's only in English. There's somebody with hearing impairment attending, so it's for that purpose. Others are using it to write their notes. Okay, here's the first question from Farsi, from Iran. How do you manage to leave the shame experienced during childhood?
Could you read it again? I'm not quite sure what they're asking.
How do you manage to leave the shame experienced from childhood?
Oh, to leave the shame. Okay. That could be a whole workshop all by itself.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to wait for the next question. Or do you want to take it further? Go ahead.
No,
sorry, we're pausing. I have to remember that too.
So, toxic shame are lies that we learn to believe were true about who I am, such as I am not enough, I am less than, I am wrong, I am stupid, I am worthless, I don't deserve. They're messages we took on through how I was being treated. So for me, disputing the lie or the shame message and stating the truth is one tool I use. For example, the toxic shame message may be that I'm wrong. And the truth is, I am never wrong, but I do make mistakes. As a matter of fact, I have to make some mistakes to grow spiritually. So the truth would be that I'm never wrong, and I am free to learn through mistakes. So listing out the shame messages, which are almost always I am statements, and then writing the truth in response to each one, and using that positive, loving list on a daily basis through affirmations helped me to create loving parenting language for this child, because I did not grow up with loving parenting language. There are really well-written books on toxic shame that could be helpful as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Carol, this is Lorraine. One of the first questions that I saw from this morning, how important do you feel the no crosstalk, no feedback guideline is for meetings? That was one of the first questions this morning.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that for the English round robin. Thank you.
So I'll speak to that. Because so many of us were not heard or listened to as children, it is so important to be able to be in a safe environment in our meetings where we can share our truth and share our pain and our fears without being fixed, without being told what we're feeling is not important, without a place where we're not going to be judged or criticized for our thoughts or our feelings. That simple gift of listening and giving attention to the person who's speaking is not only healing for the person who's speaking, but it's also healing for the person who is listening, because they're not able to jump in and control the situation. So it becomes a safe as well as a respectful and healing environment for us to share our codependence recovery. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question from Portuguese. Some literature in order to do inner child work, could you recommend?
I can, but not in this forum because of the traditions.
Okay.
But I can get information to them if they want to email me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I have an English question.
No more English. It's one per language. Sorry. So Spanish. Round of feelings. Why isn't it documented? Why is there so little talk of healing the inner child in CoDA?
I don't quite know how to answer that. In the beginning of CoDA, there was very much focus on healing the inner child. We had written about it in the CoDA Blue Book under the commonly asked questions. We personally would like to see more of it.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Italian. I'm keeping track. How do you manage to live all your life together from a spiritual, material, and emotional point of view, beside your commitment in recovery as a person and as a couple? Do you have any other secrets? I'll read it again. How do you manage to live all your life together from a spiritual, material, and emotional point of view, beside your commitment in recovery as a person and as a couple? Do you have any other secrets? I guess that's a two-part.
Wow. I think in some ways, first and foremost for me, has been to recognize that we are not attached. We are two separate, unique individuals and creations of a loving higher power, spiritual being. So Mary's style and way of living life might be different and separate from mine. And because of that, she had to teach me through discussions about needs and wants how she wanted to be treated and loved emotionally, physically, sexually, intellectually, and spiritually. And I had to teach her as well, because no two people love each other the same. And I think something else that has been just as critical and important to me was that Mary is my dearest and best friend. that somehow being my wife and my best friend were two somehow separate and different things. We had to learn how to disagree and recognize if we disagreed, it didn't mean we were saying the other was wrong. We had to learn how to deal with anger and other feelings and talk about them. We had to learn how to create space, separateness. It isn't true for all couples, but it was for us because we live together, sleep together, travel together. We own a business together, counseling practices together. We serve in CoDA often together. And sometimes our together was way too much of a good thing, just like way too much of chocolate ice cream. So we had to learn how to create space and time apart without the fear of abandonment, because we both, in our recoveries, have got to nurture our relationships with ourselves as well. The quality of my relationship with Mary is directly related to the quality of my relationship with myself and the quality of my relationship with my higher power. If something's not right here, most often it's because something's not right here and or with God. So many of my issues or concerns with Mary have been symptoms of what's going on with me.
Muchas de las cosas que nosotros decimos con Mary tienen que ver conmigo.
And I used to say, if she just changed, I'd feel so much better. And she didn't. It's a wonderful question that we could talk about all day long.
Sorry, Spanish. You're not connected. Go ahead. Sorry, Ken.
It's okay. I mean, it's a wonderful question that we could talk about and offer ideas and thoughts and suggestions all day long. You know, might be a good topic for another workshop.
Thank you. Okay, so question from Russia. How to serve in CoDA in a way to help CoDA groups unity while helping them be independent?
So is that meaning helping the groups be independent or the individual?
It sounds like groups to me. I'll just reread it. How to serve in CoDA in a way to help CoDA groups in unity while helping them to be independent. It's a service question, I think.
Okay. My first thought with that is if all the CoDA groups are following the traditions and are exercising the group conscience vote, then I believe that will take care of itself. Usually what happens
Usualmente lo que ocurre
is if a group is not following the traditions and instead creating something outside of our
y
CoDA,
estando creando algo fuera de esto,
that's where difficulties come in with unity. Unity requires that we all are working from the same set of traditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's great. We've already done.
Carol, how about have an English question?
Sorry, not yet. I have to go through all the languages, Lorraine.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So from France, from the French language, is love solely spiritual?
Well, that's a whole nother day long workshop.
Give it a shot. Or shall we move on? Your choice.
No, I believe that well, a couple of things. Number one, I believe love is not a feeling. Love generates all the feelings. That love is action. As a child, I heard, well, you know I love you. but I didn't see the actions, so I learned not to trust the words. So for me, love is about matching what I say with my actions. And in my belief system, I've come to believe over, 70 some years, that my only major real purpose in being in this world is to learn to love and be loved in every circumstance, in every situation. Love doesn't mean I have to like it, but I have to respect it, which is, to me, synonymous with love. For example, many, years I didn't like or love, and I judged people's behaviors. But in my journey of recovery and healing, pretty much I have found whatever I judged in them, I found in me. And so today, in love, I respect others' wounds because we are not bad people. That's the lie of shame. And my higher power does not create badness or junk. I had someone tell me many years ago that I was complaining about my mother and how she was too. They said to me, does God love her exactly as she is? And I knew in my heart the answer was yes. So I said yes. So he said to me, why won't you? And it was a very powerful epiphany for me spiritually. Simply put, for me, love is about actions. The actions of loving you and loving myself and loving others. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take another question, I know, from English. Lorraine, if you're ready.
Let's see. This question came in and said, please explain what you mean when you say, I am never wrong.
I'm going to let Ken answer that one instead of me answering that for him.
Oh.
Although I could.
He could tell you why I'm wrong. Wrong is a judgment, and I don't believe anyone is wrong. I believe that I've been in error. I've made mistakes. I've said things or done things that weren't accurate. But for me to tell you or myself or anyone else that you're wrong is a judgment. And judgment for me is always about toxic shame. So in the past, when people have said, well, then what's the difference? If judgment is not healthy, then what do we do? And I say, for myself, assess. I make an assessment about something. It doesn't mean anybody's wrong.
Yep. Okay, question from Portuguese. How to cope with the solitude of recovery?
How to cope with the solitude of recovery?
Yes.
So I guess when I think of coping, I think of something that I am needing to survive. And I don't know if that's what the person is meaning or not. So when I think of the solitude in recovery, it is something that...
Okay. We have, sorry.
Okay. Solitude in recovery is something that's very precious to me. It allows me that place of knowing where I begin and end, and where you also have that place of beginning and ending for yourself. But I believe that as human beings, we are relational by nature. And so desire relationship with ourselves, each other, higher power, our earth, our puppy dogs. And codependence recovery allows me healthy time for all of that. So solitude becomes my friend and something I treasure. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Iran. How to differentiate between loving and controlling? How to differentiate between loving and controlling?
There's a whole nother workshop. My goodness, these are great questions. But I'll answer that question in a little bit different way, okay? Controlling would look like this, energetically. Loving looks like this.
So can you describe that for the recording? Your hand gestures.
Yes, controlling means I've injected my energy into a person, place, or situation, or all the above, to try to make them and or circumstances work out the way I want them to work out. And loving is that I pull my energy back in and keep it in my heart and allow others to be who and what they are, possibly offer a suggestion, but always practice the first 3 steps. Rather than controlling the outcome and taking that away from God, I surrender the outcome to the care of God. And when the outcome hasn't gone the way I've wanted it to go or hoped it would go, it was almost always a matter of time before I could see the wisdom of the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. While I'm looking, we still have some time. So a question from the English then, Lorraine.
Here's a good question. How to create a family if I have no example of it?
I'll answer that one. For myself, even though I was married and had children, had parents, had sisters, had cousins, I had to learn how to create that family within. My loving self-parent was both mother and father within. My inner child showed up at various ages, from small to teenage years. I had the higher self who was the wise woman inside of me. That was a lot like an inner sponsor. And I had to learn how to integrate all those parts of me and communicate with all those parts of me. I was not taught about how to have a healthy, loving family, but I was taught that I needed to learn how to lovingly be there for my inner child and to lovingly teach my inner child the things I never learned, to lovingly show up for my inner child with healthy boundaries before I could ever teach my physical children that. I wanted to make all these changes with my physical children early in recovery. I wanted to be this healthy mom for them before I knew what any of it was about. I had to create that family within first. I read lots of books on parenting, went to therapy to learn how to parent, talked to friends about how to parent, but until I parented myself, it was just head knowledge. I had to integrate it into my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question from French language. Was it difficult for you to find your higher power and surrender to him? Was it difficult for you to find your higher power and surrender to him?
That's a very good question. And I had looked to outside sources, even through my childhood, for some way to understand this is my higher power. religious and church experiences, even what I saw on television. And in my 12-step recovery from alcohol and drugs in NA and AA, I had done a second step, but I hadn't trusted that I believed that higher power could restore me to sanity, but I didn't trust my higher power would restore me to sanity. In my CoDA second step, I started to recognize that I had been attaching human characteristics onto a higher power, and that my higher power judged me, shamed me, wanted to punish me, and do all the things that the higher powers of my child had done. And I had transferred the characteristics of the authorities or gods of my childhood and young adult life onto God. When I recognized that and eliminated those characteristics, I was left with just a few words to describe my God. And that was that my higher power was pure love, and that my higher power absolutely loves and adores me. And I had been transferring my fear and shame onto God. So I was able to begin to work with a loving, truly loving higher power, which today I call love, that is fully, absolutely conscious of me, loves me and adores me. Then I was left with the question, am I going to trust this loving higher power? And time and circumstances in life have shown me beyond all question that I absolutely can trust my loving higher power. And that higher power knows the desires of my heart and truly wants to fulfill them, but it may not be in my teenager's time and way and how it's supposed to look. That is that inner teenager, by the way. And I can say with all sincerity that it has been far greater than I could have ever imagined life to be. Wow. I could not imagine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, CoDA was young, and I could never imagine sitting here talking to all of you around the world today. And that's all of our higher powers doing.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to take another question that I see here.
Okay.
This might be a little bit personal. I don't know if you can answer it. This person says that they're visiting with an adult son and his family for 3 weeks. I see him in active addiction. It's a challenge for me spiritually and emotionally. They are aware of my being in program. Any suggestions would be appreciated.
Can I have you read that one more time?
Sure. I will be visiting and living with my adult son and his family for 3 weeks. I see him in active addiction. It is a challenge for me spiritually and emotionally. They are aware of my being in program. Any suggestions would be appreciated.
God bless you. That is challenging. Taking time for prayer and meditation, taking time to talk with other CoDA members on the telephone while you're there, basically taking time for you. If someone is in active addiction, my experience is they will not understand any of that. That doesn't mean we still don't do our recovery. Also remembering that it's important not to judge or abandon the addict, instead to lovingly communicate feelings if necessary. When I was in my addiction, the only person people were talking to was that inner addict. They weren't talking to my authentic self. I wish today I could have told them not to take anything personally, that my addiction was about my woundedness. I actually gained inspiration when I was around people in recovery, even though I was not. Just watching them do something different that I couldn't do, planted seeds for me for when I was ready to surrender to my addiction. Being our authentic selves in recovery reminds me that we are a program of attraction, not promotion, which is the best way I know to pass on recovery. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. There's more questions that were coming up in the Q&A part, and I thank you for all of these. And it's noon here, 12 o'clock, it's 12:02. So we will resume in 28 minutes. So you can chat amongst yourselves on the chat. There is still no access to the main room for chat and talk. And these interpreters, maybe they need a break too. So there won't be any interpretation at this time. But if you can work things out between yourselves on the chat, that'd be great. The Q&A is there mostly for the questions that would come to the interpreters for this question session, and there will be another one following the talk. So see you in 27 minutes. Thank you. And you can just close off your screens, interpreters and Ken and Mary, and when we come back, people will know. And mute yourself.
Carol?
Hello.
Hey there. Just going to tell you, at one point we had about 893 people.
Yeah, I saw.
I saw that. So now there's about 7, I think, people leaving or something.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe they'll pop in again.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for monitoring the emails and things. We as events need to remember to mute ourselves. I have to do that too whenever I'm watching. And I'm going to try and solve maybe problem. I'm not sure if I can. And so with my monitor off, I'm going to go for lunch.
Okay.
So, I'll be back when my monitor's on.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, welcome back. Here we are with Ken and Mary for the second talk, and it escapes me the name, so please introduce your talk. Ken and Mary, we're grateful that you are here with us all day.
Thank you. And we welcome you all to Feelings and Communication, the Language of the Heart, and Ken will be beginning. Thank you.
I'm going to start with a reading that the interpreters will be sharing simultaneously as I read. Feelings are the language of the heart, and we only experience life through our feelings. My intellectual mind cannot experience feelings. It can only think about them. Therefore, feelings are the language that comes from our heart. As they say in recovery, the longest distance in the world is the 18-inch journey from here to here, from our head to our heart. In our codependence, feelings are usually either overexpressed or not expressed, or very seldom authentically expressed. Our childhood experiences program how we are going to emotionally respond to our lives. Feelings are, as I read, are the only way we experience life. If I take feelings out of my life experience, I'm simply an android, a robot. So when I bring feelings back into my life experience, I experience my truth about my life. And for many years, my truth was based in fear and shame. So family systems teach us which feelings are going to be expressed and by who. In my family system, men could do anger. That was the rule. But there were very not nice words to describe women who did anger. So my father passed away when I was 15 months old. So I was raised by 2 sisters older than I and my mother. And so they didn't do anger. They could do the vulnerable feelings, the fear, the shame, the loneliness, the pain. And so without boundaries as a child, I took on my mother's anger and both of my sisters' anger. So I very seldom got angry in a normal fashion. It was always over the top. We know that in dysfunctional families, the family system determines which feelings are going to be expressed and who expresses them, and which feelings are not allowed. In functional families, we know that all feelings are allowed and in appropriate and healthy ways need to be expressed by each and every person. That was absolutely foreign to me. And so I grew up with pretty much a teenager as a parent and a critical parent judging and shaming me. We also know that it is the child part of who we are that carries the vulnerable feelings, the shame, the fear, the loneliness, the pain, the guilt, and the teenager carries the anger. So for me, I needed to find someone in a relationship who would do the fear, the pain, the shame, the loneliness, and I would do their anger for them because that's the only thing I knew as normal and familiar. So I had huge amounts of pain and fear and loneliness and shame and guilt building up, sometimes day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year. And I had to find something bigger and more powerful to medicate those feelings. And so for the first 28 years of my life, I drank, drugged, and raged my feelings away, which drove away just about everyone I cared about, including my children. In recovery, I had to learn how to identify all of my feelings and to share them in appropriate, healthy, and loving ways. And with that, I'm going to pass to Mary.
Most of us were not taught that there are 7 primary feelings. The 7 primary feelings are fear, anger, shame, guilt, lonely, pain, and joy. And there are healthy ways to experience and express these feelings. There are other words that describe these feelings, but most often are describing the emotional intensity of the feeling. For example, there are several words that describe the intensity of fear. Those are worry, anxious, nervous, scared, afraid, paranoid, panicked, or terrified. All these words are various emotional intensities of fear. A helpful way to gauge our emotional intensity is looking at a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the least intense expression of a feeling and 10 is the greatest intensity expression of a feeling. Anything over a 4 on a 10-point scale of intensity is considered emotional reaction as opposed to emotional responding. One of the things that I had learned for myself in my own recovery is that when I was responding with my feelings, I was in my healthy adult. And when I was reacting in my feelings, I was in my child or that teenager. The steps helped me to learn how to emotionally regulate. My 4th step taught me all the ways that I was being reactive. My 6th and 7th step helped me begin to rebuild and learn ways to respond from a healthy adult. My prayer and meditation with my higher power helped me stay centered in who was in charge, which was my higher power. The more I began to learn about my feelings, the more I learned that there were gifts with each one of them. I was able to learn that with fear, with healthy fear, that even though fear is always about future, the healthy use of fear between that 1 and that 4 on the 10-point scale of intensity gets me into problem solving and solutions and asking questions that I need to ask in my life. Out of that, I gain the gift of wisdom. With pain, the gift that I realized was that every time that I could breathe into my pain, to really feel it and experience it, I would gain the gift of healing. Now, if I added shame to that, that said I was being a crybaby or I was overly sensitive or something was wrong with me for having pain, that healing would get lost, and instead I would just move into suffering. There's a great spiritual teacher out there who said that pain is just a part of life, but suffering is optional. So Ken was talking about, I didn't do anger. Of course, that has since changed. The gift that I found with anger, assertive anger, where I can stand up for myself and speak my truth, was that I would become empowered. I'd have inner strength. I would know I could stand up for myself and take care of myself. When I didn't do my anger and instead suppressed it because I was afraid of it, and I would add shame to that. My mom was a rager, and so I didn't want to be like my mom. My anger would then convert into rage, only I did it passive aggressively. So I would shut down, go away. I would be quiet. I would avoid. I would become needless and wantless. And I would push Ken away, or I'd push my kids away, or I'd push my friends. I'd push everybody away from that place. And instead of having that inner strength, I would become weak with my rage. Feelings are so important to learn how to identify them and express them in healthy ways. As I shared earlier, I had many ways that I would medicate those feelings, and I would lose out on the gifts that those feelings were teaching me. So I had to learn when I was over that 4 on that 10-point scale of intensity, I basically had 1 foot back in my childhood and 1 foot in today. And I was bringing all that emotional energy from my childhood and projecting it into my today. So I had to begin to use that emotional reaction as a red flag to let me know that my inner child was needing something from me. And when I addressed that within my inner child, I could then respond to Ken. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Ken again.
The interpreters are going to read simultaneously with me. Healthy Parenting and Communication, Chapter 5, Commonly Asked Questions, CoDA Blue Book. Parenting or reparenting ourselves means recognizing we are capable human beings who are choosing to become fully functioning, emotionally healthy adults. Parenting ourselves means reflecting on and responding to situations rather than reacting. We know today that recovery, and roughly 80% of recovery, and this, including the steps and the traditions, are really designed to help us grow an internal parent. We made connections many years ago about, we talk in recovery about the spiritual principles of our program. And we began to understand that the psychological principles found in the 12 steps and 12 traditions are really found in just about every parenting book written. So the steps and the traditions force us to grow internally into our self-parent and to give us some focus as to how to relate to a higher power, to ourselves, and to others. And with that in mind, we really have to take a serious, honest look at where are our models for parenting. Ideally, they are our sponsors. Our sponsors are simply guides along a path who have been down that path farther than we have and have developed an internal parent for themselves and modeled that to us. There may be other healthy sources as well, therapists or coaches or good friends. I've learned much about parenting simply by being in a meeting and listening to others share. So my job as a parent, well, one of my jobs as a parent is to create a safe world for this child and this teen to come out and be who they truly are, be authentic. We know that it is the child part of who we are that carries the spontaneity, the creativity, the play, the laughter, the fun, the humor, the hopes, and the dreams. They also carry all the memories of what happened, good and bad, and the feelings about it all. So part of my job as a parent to this child and teen is to create a safe world and safe people to be with, and let that child and teen out to simply be spontaneous, playful, fun, hopeful, to dream, and to enjoy other folks' children. Some of the richest experiences I've ever had with Mary is with her little girl and this little boy. But if I take them out of it, I'm simply an intellectual adult kind of doing life, sort of boring. It's true. So we play a lot because of that. And because of recovery and the work that we do, we hear some of the worst of the world and some of the most painful circumstances. So we balance it with play, fun, laughter. And we kind of have to back the teenagers off because we want to get too much sugar going and caffeine and all that other stuff. It's true. I believe wholeheartedly it's my child that carries the spirit of who I am.
Ken, just either speak slower or longer pause for the interpreters, please.
Sorry about that. Do you want me to repeat myself?
I think we're good to continue.
It was a wake-up call for me to see that the most natural, spirited, alive, spontaneous, and real beings in all the world were the children. And many philosophies teach that we need to become far more like them than ever try to make them like us. And I think I'll pass it.
So I will read this next section simultaneously with the interpreters. In recovery, it is through our experiencing and sharing our feelings that creates emotional intimacy. We remember that feelings and the healthy communication of feelings is the way we allow others to know us. When we listen to another's healthy sharing of feelings, we are acknowledging they are risking sharing a part of themselves. If someone is sharing their feelings in a reactive manner, then we are able to practice self-parenting and healthy boundary setting that we have learned in our CoDA program. I was always taught that there are 5 intimacies in relationship, and that they are physical, sexual, spiritual, intellectual, and emotional. And that emotional intimacy is by far the hardest to create. Ken and I both share the unhealthy ways that feelings get created and the unhealthy way that feelings are either dictated or not allowed in our families. So to create true emotional intimacy where there is loving allowance for both people to be able to have their feelings, loving allowance for the healthy sharing and listening of feelings, that creates true emotional intimacy. It's that way of sharing from heart to heart. Just in the title of our workshop, that feelings are the language of the heart. I had to also learn in this that no one had to agree with my feelings, that my thoughts and perceptions created my feelings. Can I share that there's no wrong feelings? Because my feelings are a response or reaction to what I'm thinking. They just are. There's no right or wrong with them. My thoughts can be really unhealthy. How I share my feelings can be really unhealthy, but my feelings just are. What I was taught is that my feelings are my body's response to the stimulus of thought. So I'm going to pass this over to Ken. Thank you.
The interpreters are going to join me as we read from Chapter 5, Commonly Asked Questions in the CoDA Blue Book. When we have healthy internal boundary systems, we recognize that each individual is responsible for his or her emotional, mental, and spiritual boundaries. We allow ourselves and others to have their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions, behaviors, beliefs, and spirituality. With functional boundaries, we are able to meet our needs without infringing on others' abilities to meet their needs. All feelings are shared with boundaries and without expectation of outcome. We trust the outcome to our higher power. I could give you many, many examples of boundaries, internal and external, but there's a couple that really stand out and are central in the theme of what we've been sharing here this morning or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. And that is that I already shared that the rules about emotions in my family were that men could get angry and have joy, and women did the rest of the feelings. And that was normal. So I had to go out into the world and turn on the radar and find women who didn't do anger, but would do all the other feelings. So we were emotionally a perfect match. And between us, all the feelings were expressed because we know that feelings demand to be expressed. And if I'm not expressing mine, I will find somebody to do it for me. So with the help of a very good therapist many years ago, Mary was sharing a story that encompassed a great deal of anger, only she wasn't expressing the anger. And I was on the couch fussing and fussing and fussing and moving around and fussing. And the therapist looked at me and said, "Ken, what?" And I said, "Well, Mary, and the story and the anger and all this anger." And she said, "Ken, stop." So I did and looked at her. And she said, "As long as you continue to do Mary's anger for her, she will never learn to do it herself, and you will rob her of the gift of the power and strength associated with her own anger." And I was like, oh, relief.
I was terrified.
Mary was terrified because she knew that she was going to have to start doing her own anger. And not very long after that, same therapist, I'm telling a story of pain and trauma and abuse. And Mary's on the other end of the couch crying. I have no emotional affect. And Donna looked at her and said, Mary, what? Well, he's hurting and his pain and we were saying everything happened. Oh, poor him. It's true. And she said, Mary, stop. If you continue to do his pain for him, you will rob him of the true gift of healing. And she was absolutely relieved, and I was terrified. Because I knew I was going to have to start doing my own fear, pain, loneliness, shame, and guilt. So I had to learn to start asserting boundaries with Mary and her anger and not take it on, and simply allow her to have her anger. And she was going to have to learn to have boundaries with me and allow me to have my fear, pain, shame, loneliness, and guilt, and not take it on. So we began to grow true emotional intimacy because we were both sharing our feelings with each other consistently. But it required parenting boundaries and for us to allow each other to have and respect our own feelings. And I had to learn as well to allow all the rest of the world to have their feelings and to let the world be what it is. In my codependence, my well-being was based on what you thought and felt. In my recovery, my well-being is not based on Mary or you or anyone other than my higher power. And I'm gonna give it back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will be reading this simultaneously with our interpreters. Our thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs create our feelings. Therefore, sharing feelings in I statements is so important. No one can make me feel anything. It is how I'm perceiving what is being said that determines how I will feel about it. We found it helpful in the determination and communicating of our feelings in any situation to use the list of the 7 primary feelings. There are many communication guides, but a simple way to communicate our feelings are, and this is healthy emotional communication examples. Number 1, what I heard you say is, and I feel, the feeling word. Is that what you meant to say? Number 2, when I saw you fill in the blank, I felt in the feeling word. Number 3, what I experienced was, and you describe the experience, when you fill in the blank, and I feel in the feeling word. All statements are said without any shame, blame, judgment, criticism, sarcasm, analyzing, and without any expectation of outcome. Many times in the sharing of feelings, because again, feelings need to be in I statements, there can be a tendency to want the other person to understand our feelings and agree with them. And somehow, if the other person doesn't agree with our feelings, something's wrong with us. Because our thoughts and perceptions and beliefs create our feelings, Ken and I may have experienced the same thing, but perceived it totally differently. An example of that is with abandonment. For Ken, abandonment meant somebody leaving or sending him away. For me, abandonment meant somebody was raging at me and not seeing me as a person. So while I was learning how to do my anger, and Ken was doing some of my anger for me, when he would become angry, I felt abandoned and would go away. When I went away, Ken felt abandoned. We had to learn how to talk about our perceptions and our feelings and to share what we were hearing and experiencing without any expectation that the other person would understand it. Our job simply was to communicate in a healthy emotional way. So we used this form of communication and practiced and practiced and practiced over and over. We did it until it became natural. Today, we're able to do that without thinking about it, without expectation of outcome, with healthy boundaries, probably about 80 to 85% of the time. The 10 to 15% keeps us humble. With that, I'll turn it back to Ken.
I just want to close the workshop portion of this with a brief reading. Though this can seem overwhelming at times, it simply takes practice. As with so many aspects of our recovery, if we are diligent in these efforts, we will experience a new love and acceptance of ourselves and others. We will become capable of developing and maintaining healthy and loving relationships, and we will learn to see ourselves as equal to others. Which brings us now, I think, to Q&A, questions and answers.
I did click. I didn't unclick it. Okay.
That's all right.
Sorry, as before, thank you so much. You guys are right on target. I appreciate it. And always good content. So with the question and answer period, it's the same as before. If you would send your question to your respective interpreter, and it will be first come, first serve, round robin, and we were able to cover all the interested languages last time. So we'll go with the first one that comes my way. And again, interpreters, if you put it in our global conversation group, it makes it easy for me to see how things come first one up. Oh, somebody's typing already. But maybe there's an English question, Lorraine, that's ready. And if not, I can go to the Q&A and just take one. Okay, how do you communicate with your higher power and know the answers are from higher power?
So I'll speak for myself. How I know that is when I'm talking to my higher power, I allow time for meditation and silence, so that what I hear in that is inspiration from my higher power. The way I tell the difference between my voice and my higher power's voice is that my voice will tend to scare me, warn me, be angry at me, and my higher power's voice will be loving and wise and strong.
And for me, I had to create a place in my mind for my higher power to talk to me. It started through prayer, meditation, and then I had, slow down. And I believe that the workshop, or that the imagination is the workshop of the spirit. So I imagine conversations with my higher power. And pretty soon, I could distinctly hear my higher power's voice. And I was not schizophrenic. And my higher power's voice was amazingly loving and warm and powerful. And because of that dialogue with my higher power, CoDA came about. I drove an hour to and an hour from a treatment center that I worked at outside of Phoenix. And we were at a place with our therapist where we were paying her to be a sponsor. And we tried sharing about codependence in AA meetings and NA meetings, and we're told not to talk about that stuff here. And so for a few months, at least once or twice a week, I would hear this voice of my higher power say, Ken, start a meeting. And I would say, no, I can't do that. No, that's for people like Bill W. and Dr. Bob and AA. And then the fear and shame would come up. What will others say? And finally, after about 2 months, I said, okay, I'll talk to Mary. And here we are. So for me, it's a clear dialogue fairly consistently with my higher power. We have conversations a lot. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, question from Spanish. I think this is Spanish. I've heard that no one can make you feel anything. How is it achieved? I've heard that no one can make you feel anything. How is that achieved?
So because our thoughts create our feelings, so if there were an old analogy is, I know, if there are 10 people that witnessed a car accident, there will be 10 different sets of thoughts and feelings about that car accident, all depending on the perceptions of each individual. My perceptions were developed during the first 18, 19 years of my life, or I should say most of my perceptions were developed during that time. So how I perceive something or think about something is going to be unique to me. And my thoughts create my feelings. So no one can make me angry. It's how I'm perceiving what is being said or done that I will choose to be angry. If I'm in a movie and there's a sad movie and I'm crying, it's how I'm perceiving the movie that's going to determine my feelings about it. So no one has the power to make me feel anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A French question. You have been talking a lot about inner child. If I understand that we've all been a child at some point, we have evolved, grown, and changed. This is a good thing to continuously talk about our childhood, how to move on from our childhood and then become parents. I'll read it again. You've been talking a lot about inner child. If I understand that we've all been a child at some point, we shall have evolved, grown, and changed. This is it a good, maybe, is it a good thing to continuously talk about our childhood, how to move on from our childhood then and become parents?
I think there is a big difference between talking about our childhood and talking about our child. For myself in recovery, I don't talk much about my childhood anymore, other than in certain CoDA events or shares. But I do talk about my child. And you all have had a chance to see glimpses of him and her today. In my perspective, the child part of me is the most real, authentic part of who I am and carries my spirit. I never want to lose sight of him. And when I do today, he lets me know pretty quickly. There's an old saying, as without, so within. My inner relationship with my child self and teen self is no different than a relationship I would have with a child and teen living with me. His story is today just a story because I resolved my feelings about all the traumas that he carried. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Portuguese. Can you explain the phrase, imagination is the workshop of the spirit? How can I do that?
Mm.
I'll read it again.
Okay.
Find it again. Can you explain the phrase, imagination is the workshop of the spirit, and how can I do that?
So when I look at imagination and knowing that comes from my child spirit, my connection with my higher power, it is different than fantasy. Fantasy is there to fix my feelings, where the imagination of my spirit is there to enhance me. You want to add something to that? Yeah.
Imagination for me comes from a different part of my brain we call the higher self. And I know today it is directly linked to my heart, not my brain. And when I am operating from that part of my brain, I'm operating in what I call the 4 ins.
They're waiting for that.
Insight, intuition, inspiration, which means literally in spirit, and instinct. They are all experienced in the heart, not in the brain. It's a portal that I go to through conscious choice, prayer, and meditation that allows for the spirit, my higher power, to talk with me and give me insight, inspiration, intuition, instinct. And I believe it takes practice through prayer and meditation to open that part of our brain. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Lorraine has an English question.
Okay, there. This one says, how do I, as a parent, communicate with my qualifier who does not know how to live and love himself, is not willing to forgive and be forgiven? Although he is sober, but mentally he is still trying to manipulate and force us to support him financially.
Okay, Lorraine, if you could read it in a segment at a time.
Oh, surely.
Pause.
Okay, let's try it again. How do I, as a parent, communicate with my qualifier who does not know how to live and love himself, is not willing to forgive and be forgiven, although he is sober, but mentally he is still trying to manipulate and force us to support him financially?
Thank you. So this is one of those times that I have to own it. I have to take my therapist hat off for a moment and just talk from recovery. One is this may be an area to seek out therapy on. Sometimes we need outside help. From a recovery place, and I could only talk if this was me, so I'm not advice giving. If it were me, I would share with the person my boundaries, my limits, and my needs. And to share, if that person was unwilling to honor those, what I would need to do to take care of myself, to share it without any expectation of outcome, and be willing to do whatever it is that I said I was going to do to take care of myself, even if that meant not financially supporting the person. Now that's what I would do. I think every situation is different. And there's some areas that I do believe that we need therapeutic help with resolving. I know I did throughout my recovery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you have a question. It's a little bit long from Iran. first of all, I appreciate you who are spreading love with your soul. Second, about my question, there are several lovely values in CoDA which are acceptable with heart, but there is a real conflict between these values and the real values of our community, which we live in. For instance, the community says the real value about self-esteem is money, work, etc. And also, in a real world, money is usable in a moment, but my mind and CoDA mention that self-esteem is not about having money. How can I cope with these kinds of conflicts between CoDA values and real world values? Shall I read it again? I'll read it one more time for the interpreter's sake.
Okay.
So I'll just go to the question. There are several lovely values in CoDA which are acceptable with heart, but there is a real conflict between these values and the real values of our community, which we live. For instance, the community says the real value about self-esteem is money, work, etc. And also, in a real world, money is usable in a moment. But my mind and CoDA mention that self-esteem is not about having money. How can I cope with these kinds of conflicts between CoDA values and real world values?
I could answer that a number of ways, but I think it's easiest understood for me in something called loving allowance. We live in a community, Mary and I do, with nice people and good neighbors. Our values are in many ways very different than theirs. And for me, that doesn't mean I judge them. I lovingly allow them to be exactly who they are and know that my well-being isn't based on sharing the same values. We talk a bit about a program of acceptance, and acceptance means I've already judged it and now I have to accept it. Loving allowance is an energy, a love, a vibration above acceptance, I believe. And in loving allowance, I can accept and allow them to be exactly who they are and appreciate our differences and continue to seek out people of like mind, recovery people, and people who share similar principles. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. So I don't have any more in my chat, so I'm going to, in my interpreter's chat. So I'm going to go to the first one I read here. How can you not let others be a wrong higher power for you? For example, for not let yourself be frustrated or rewarded by someone's approval or lack thereof. I will read it again. How can you not let others be a wrong higher power for you? For example, not let yourself be frustrated or rewarded by someone's approval or lack thereof.
Thank you. So for me, because sometimes I think I can make codependence recovery too complex, and I like to keep things simple. I work at not having any expectations of others or of outcomes. I find the moment I have an expectation of somebody else or myself or of an outcome, I then am making them my higher power. So I work consistently at not having any expectations in my life. Keeping it that simple for me keeps me from making my feelings or Ken or anybody else or situations my higher power. And it takes me right back into how do I need to lovingly self-parent? How do I need to practice compassionate, empowered communication? And as Ken was just talking, how do I need to practice loving allowance for myself and others? It brings it back to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The question from Portuguese is, how can I repair relationships with people that I don't have contact with? Step 8. Question again. How can I repair relationships with people that I don't have contact with? Step 8. Just give the translators a moment. Okay.
The simplest answer for me is that a letter can be written to them, heartfelt, sincere, being accountable for my side of the fence, not theirs. And once again, send the letter, but trust the outcome to God. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question from Russia. So, I work consistently at not having any expectations in my life. Keeping it that simple for me keeps me from making my feelings, or can anybody else or situation my higher power? Oh, I'll begin again. So I work consistently at not having any expectations in my life. Keeping it that simple for me keeps me from making my feelings or others or situations my higher power. And it takes me right back into how I need to lovingly self-parent. Do I need to practice compassionate, empowered communication?
Carol, I think that was a repeat of what I just said.
Okay, then I'm mistaken. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I think
Good
this person
question.
is saying that they like the live transcript. Making translation easy for that person. And I'm thinking it's a question. Okay, all's good. Thank you. Okay.
Her own question.
It's a good quote enough. So Lorraine, do you have another English question? If not, I can find one here. Well, here's the practical one. Is there a way to get the CoDA Blue Book indexed so we can have topics at our disposal? It may not be a question for you.
I think that would be something to share with your group representative, who would take it to your, end up taking it to the conference where those things are decided, but it's a great idea.
Here's another good short question. Where did the actual word codependence originate? Where did the actual word codependence originate?
It originally grew out in the 1950s.
Okay. Oh, you're going to say more. Sorry.
Yeah. There was an individual who was very much involved in the study of what he called the co-alcoholics. His name was Vernon Johnson. And he termed the coin co-alcoholic, or he coined the term co-alcoholic. I just said that backwards. Which in time it expanded into adult children of alcoholics, still considered co-alcoholics. And then about 40 years ago, the term codependent emerged, and it was based on a psychiatric diagnosis called compulsive dependent personality disorder, or someone who compulsively depends on someone else. The same as a drug addict depends on drugs, and an alcoholic depends on alcohol. And So it caught on very quickly. And the first book about it was written by someone who was a non-professional and in recovery in AA, and she nailed it. Oops. And it has been there ever since. I believe that it gets misdiagnosed with many other diagnoses. Sometimes it's called chronic anxiety, attachment disorder, avoidant personality, various types of depression. Many of them are simply codependence. I believe that Al-Anons might not want to hear this, but I believe that Al-Anons are codependent on alcoholics. Nar-Anon are people who are codependent on drug addicts. CoSA, or co-sex addicts, are codependents who are codependent on sex addicts. And that these programs really speak to the codependence associated with the culture of the person we're addicted to.
Okay, that's good. Oh, you're muted, Ken. There, okay, go. Did you want to finish your thought?
It's all codependence. I believe today that everyone is a little bit codependent. It's part of the human experience. And when it advances or escalates and starts causing problems in our life, we need to deal with it like any other addiction or compulsive behavior. So we have CoDA. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Mary, can you repeat the 8 things that you told about yourselves, I guess? It was said before the break. Okay, I'm going to skip that one because that's from the previous time. And I think if these are 8 things, the transcripts, the quotes that Ken and Mary had, we're going to attach them to the world announcement that goes out with the recording. And hopefully all the translators will pass me their translations and it will go out in that form as well. So I'm going to leave that one, and I have another one. Please share your thoughts. Please share your thoughts on the possibility of reconciliation and establishment of a healthy, loving relationship post-abuse. Again, please share your thoughts on the possibility of reconciliation and establishment of a healthy, loving relationship post-abuse.
So I can share a little bit from my own experience. One of the abuses I experienced in childhood was sexual abuse by my father. When I started working on that, one of my sisters told my father I was working on that because I'm in a dysfunctional family. And my father said as long as I was talking about that, I could not be a part of the family. My family backed him, agreed with him, and so it was about 16, 17 years that I was not a part of my family of origin. I continued my healing work and my step work and my forgiveness work. I would periodically try to contact them to test the waters. Unfortunately, my father and I never resolved anything before he passed, but I was resolved within me and didn't need anything from him. My mother and I had about 6 more years together, and I also didn't need anything from her, and I approached her from a place of love and acceptance. Codependence is intergenerational. So my mother was a wounded person. Prior to her death, she made amends to me. We were able to enjoy her last 5 years together. because I didn't need anything from her and I allowed her just to be who she was. I'm hoping that because of that, that gave her a level of safety in her own wounds to be able to make amends to me. My sisters also started doing their own work and healing work, and our relationships were able to heal and evolve and get to a loving place with each other. I kept practicing detachment with love without any expectations and trusting every single outcome to my higher power. I did not need them to heal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken and Mary. Just appreciate all the wisdom that you have spilled out to us. And it's kind of sad to bring this to a close, but that's what we're up to next. So with gratitude, the closing remarks will be given by Fernando, who's a Spanish interpreter, and Monica will be the Spanish interpreter who will move to the English interpretation channel to give the translation in English in a moment. Thus, everybody who's in the main room and you're English, please press on the globe interpretation, and in a moment choose English when I finish speaking. And Monica will give Fernando's closing remarks in English. It's been translated, and every other interpreter will have that same copy in their own language to convey it in the channels. So we're all going to be in the channels, and what another opportunity this gives us to experience this world experience. Okay, so following Fernando's closing remarks, we will have the reading of the promises and the serenity prayer in that channel that you are in before closing the webinar. Thank you for attending and giving Ken and Mary a warm reception. And I'm sure that they would be all wanting to say how much they've all, as you were saying, we all perceive an accident differently. Well, can you imagine all the different perceptions of codependency recovery we would hear today? I think it's beautiful. And as mentioned, there's a survey that will be posted. I'll put it up again in your, and it might get past. It will go in that same world announcement with the recording, the quotes from the Blue Book that Ken and Mary made, and I think there might be something else there. The survey, I guess it's just those three things, and we're going to send them in interpretations to that which comes to me this week, please, interpreters, if you haven't already. And so that would be Ken and Mary's information too. If you would do that, that'd be great. And so we'll just welcome Fernando as we all move into the English channel, those of us who are English. And everybody else just remain where you are.
Carol.
And we'll meet Monica there. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
You've done an amazing job, and all of you interpreters and all of you committee members, and you guys are such blessings to us and to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate that because of all the hard work everybody's done behind the scenes to bring this together, and yours included. And so it's a world effort. Grateful.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the channels.
Okay.
Monica, we're waiting on.
Hey, Carol. It's Lorraine.
I'm sorry to interrupt everybody. No. Interrupt everybody. Maybe you took me too literally. It's the English people that need to go to the English channel, and every other interpreter stay in their own channel, because there's multiple layers of languages being spoken in the English channel. So please. So this is what I'm assuming it's doing, that some interpreters came to the English channel. So stay in your language and then we'll just finish with the promises and the serenity prayer. It was an interesting experience. So just the English people go to the English channel. Everybody else, particularly the interpreters, if you're not Monica, you're in your own language channel. Thank you very much. Monica, if you want to go in, can you read the promises? No. Okay, Lorraine, do you have the promises in front of you?
I will in just a second. I lost the audio for about 15 minutes, Carol. So the last,
That's all right.
Let's see, as soon as I get there. Oh, you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, I think I'll do
Oh, okay. Okay. The 12 promises of Codependence Anonymous. I can expect a miraculous change in my life by working the program of Codependence Anonymous as I make an honest effort to work the 12 steps and follow the 12 traditions. 1, I know a new sense of belonging. The feeling of emptiness and loneliness will disappear. 2, I am no longer controlled by my fears. I overcome my fears and act with courage, integrity, and dignity. 3, I know a new freedom. 4, I release myself from worry, guilt, and regret about my past and present. I'm aware enough not to repeat it. 5, I know a new love and acceptance of myself and others. I feel genuinely lovable, loving, and loved. 6, I learn to see myself as equal to others. My new and renewed relationships are all with equal partners. 7, I am capable of developing and maintaining healthy and loving relationships. The need to control and manipulate others will disappear as I learn to trust those who are trustworthy. 8, I learn that it is possible to mend, to become more loving, intimate, and supportive. I have the choice of communicating with my family in a way which is safe for me and respectful of them. 9, I acknowledge that I am a unique and precious creation. 10, I no longer need to rely solely on others to provide my sense of worth. 11, I trust the guidance I receive from my higher power and come to believe in my own capabilities. 12, I gradually experience serenity, strength, and spiritual growth in my daily life. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think what I'm going to do is go back to the main room, and everybody here in the English channel will come back. And I'm going to Monica, are you still here? So I'm going to read, I'm just going to let people know we're going to read Fernando's statement again. I'll be right back. Please don't go. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry about what happened. I think in all respect and compassion that for the meld of languages all in the English channel, please let's read again Fernando's statement because I think that would be a nice finish before we close with the Serenity Prayer. Let's just see if Monica's come back. Hi, Monica. Great. Monica, please go ahead and read Fernando's statement again. Thank you. Yes, thank you. We're going to, yeah, yes. No, we'll, the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer. God.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Harry, God grant me the serenity to accept. I'm sorry, I can only do it from the beginning, but if we do it together, maybe. Monica, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Keep coming back. Thanks, Monica. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to come out back to the main room. Just click on off at the top of the list of languages. Okay, we're back in the main room, or all those who can. And I just want to say thank you for coming. It's been an exceptional time. And And I'm super happy that this has come together as well as it has. Thank you again for your understanding and patience and having this great experience to just pause and think, particularly us in the English world, but I think it happened on all the channels. Everybody had to pause and think and just take it in. So I think we've all taken something away from this. So I wish you well. Thank you, interpreters. Thank you, all of you who are behind the scenes in the webinar that have come from across the world. And maybe we'll do this again. I look forward to hearing your responses. The survey that is now posted in the chat. And I wish you well, give you hugs. And I like this one that's gone around, and lots of love.
Thanks so much, Carol and Shaf and everyone else behind the scenes. I really appreciate being part of this incredible event. And thank you, Ken and Mary. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm here in Atlanta. And thank you for joining us and being a tremendous help to so many people. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. This is
thank you, Ken and Mary.
Thanks, Chef.
Thank you to Lorraine and Shaf for today. They handled it all.
Amazing wisdom.
Sorry,
Deeply grateful for your presence.
Sorry, Shaf. Sorry. Just again.
That's great.
Shaf.
Yeah. Did you want me to repeat?
Yeah, sorry. I even talked over you. I didn't hear you.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Thank you so much, Ken and Mary, for this amazing workshop and for all of your wisdom and sharing it. It's been such a blessing and honor to have you here and to share space with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The honor is ours.
Yes, very much.
Thank you. Carol,
Yes.
for all of your incredible work with setting up the interpretation. I know how challenging it's been. Just
Thank you.
all of my gratitude and love to you for doing all that. And it's gone really well. And it's been slowing down and letting Ken and Mary's words sink in for me has been very, very touching, and slowing down really for me helps the message sink in a lot deeper. And, Lorraine, thank you for helping out with the questions and helping set up the event. Much love and gratitude to you, and to all the attendees. It's been an honor to have all of you here, and thank you so much for signing up and showing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Shaf, you lead the way very well. I can't speak like the gratitude I have that there's people behind that support us, we're supporting each other and bring us together, bring this event together. I know that the panelists have this opportunity to speak directly to you, Ken and Mary, and the attendees are behind the scenes. But I think that each person here is one representation of the over nearly 900 people who came, and wow. That's the largest number that was here at the one time. But that also means that there are people who have come and gone through it, where we see the numbers fluctuate. So we've had a wonderful, wonderful turnout, and it's so great to hear from the foundation. That just builds my foundation even more. But because we have this opportunity, and I don't know if because these interpreters are still here, maybe they want to give a voice of gratitude, which will reflect everybody else's in attendance. If you just raise your hand, we'll just go through, and I'll just call your name.
Oh.
Your virtual hand. Yeah. So Rosella.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm giving you co-host, and you can put your video on.
Okay. Just one moment.
If you want. And I'm going to stop the recording here.